Hi, my name is Brady, and this is going to be the official walkthrough of the Triathlon lab on Hack Smarter. This is a lab that I created back in October of 2025, and it is now being released in January of 2026. So without any further ado, we'll go ahead and get to the walkthrough. Okay, hopping over to the lab platform, you can see all of our machines are running here. You can see, here's my name, woohoo. No walkthroughs yet because this is pre-release, but after this is released, there will be my walkthrough and other people's walkthroughs right here. For the premise, you can see an elite triathlon team from the United States has requested a penetration test on their internal network. They've granted access to their network via VPN, but no other information has been provided. Successful testers should prove full compromise by providing the NTLM hash for the KRB TGT account. All right, simple enough. So we do have our IP addresses. I've went ahead and run a preliminary Nmap scan on these IPs. You can see in order, we have Swim server, which is just a regular, looks like a Windows server or workstation. We have the bike server. So this one is kind of the same thing, but it also has an HTTP service running on it. So we can assume that this one is a server. And then over here, we have run server. This one has what looks to be like typical domain controller ports on it. So we know that we're operating in a Windows environment. We're going to want to configure our etc hosts file. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up. And all we want to do is add our IP addresses and our host names. So I'm going to add the run server first because this is the one that looks to be the domain controller. Okay, so what I'm going to add for the domain controller here is I'm going to add the fully qualified domain name. And then I'm going to do a space and add that again and just get rid of this period. So now what I'm left with is the fully qualified domain name. I have the NetBIOS name or the host name, and then we have the domain name here. So this is going to tell DNS anytime that it's resolving to our domain to go ahead and look at run server first. And then we can also just reference run server by name. All right, so now that we have that, I'm going to add the other two servers here. So we'll start with the Swim server, grab this IP address and put it in here. And then grab our fully qualified domain name again. Let me get back on that line. I'm going to paste that in. And then this time I'm going to get rid of the domain name. We don't want the domain name resolving to multiple places, and it would do it in this file from top to bottom anyways. So it doesn't really need to be there. But now we have our fully qualified domain name and then also our NetBIOS name. And then same thing, I'll just do this for the bike server. So let me grab our IP address and then our fully qualified domain name. And then I'm going to do the same thing I did for the previous one. Just go ahead and chop off the domain name. Then I'll save this, put in my password, which is just Kali on this machine because it's a virtual machine on the Kali image. And now we can go ahead and use this for any name resolution that we're going to have to do for the remainder of the lab. All right, now to hop into the lab's content. So if you look around on the servers, you won't find much in the way of a foothold. And if we look at our lab premise here, you can see that we have network access via VPN. We don't have any credentials or anything like that. So what we're going to have to do is go ahead and perform some open source intelligence or OSINT. So I'm going to grab right here this elite triathlon team from the United States, and we'll go ahead and start there. I'm just going to throw this into a search engine. So in my case, it's going to be Google. It doesn't really matter. And you can see that the first result when we paste this in verbatim is a page from USA Triathlon. It says our elite teams. Let's go ahead and open this up and see what we get. Okay, scrolling down, you can see that there is the US Elite Triathlon National Team. This sounds kind of like what we're looking at. And a Meet the Team link, so I'm going to go ahead and click on this one. And scrolling down, let me get rid of the cookies so that we can see this a little bit better. Scrolling down, you can see we have bios for a bunch of athletes here. We're going to use this as a list of potential usernames. So what I'll do here is, let me open a tab here, and I'm going to start a word list. So we're going to call this potential, we don't have valid yet, potential usernames, or we'll call this potential users.txt. I'm going to open that up. And then I'm just going to go ahead and directly copy and paste each of these entries in there. We have Gwen Jorgensen, Kirsten Casper, Taylor Neeb. We have Summer Rappaport, Gina Sereno, Taylor Spivey. And then for the men, we have Morgan Pearson, John Reed. Oops, I did not paste that. And Seth Ryder. And I believe this is it. I think there were only 9 entries on this page. Yep. Okay, so this is going to be our word list to start off with. However, because this is just first name and last name, we don't have it in any kind of format. So here I'm going to use a tool called user list generator, and I already have this cloned on my machine. So we have this user list generator. It is a Rust tool, and it's going to take a list of names just like that, and it's going to turn them into formats that could be potentially used for username. So I'm going to copy and paste in some syntax here just so I don't have to hand jam it all out. But it's going to take our potential users.txt and it's going to run this against it and turn it into a potential usernames.txt. Okay, so I went ahead and run that, and then we can see what this looks like. So I'll cat out that potential usernames.txt, and we can see that each name has been transformed in a couple of ways. So we have like first letter dot last name, we have first name last name, we have last name first name, and etc. So moving back to our home directory, we can use a tool called curbroot to go ahead and check all of these potential usernames to see if any of these are valid in the domain. I'm going to once again paste in some syntax so I don't have to hand jam it. It's going to be the curbroot user enum module. We're going to run it against the try.lab domain because that's what we found out our domain name was here. We can use our potential usernames list, and then we have to tell it to target the run server. That's our DC. And then our output is going to be a valid users.txt file. So we run that and we get back 3 valid users. I'm going to open up this valid users.txt file. Just because when I pass this into the next tool, we don't want any of this extra output. I'm going to get rid of all the other stuff that is not just the usernames themselves. So we have 3 valid users, m.pearson at try.lab, t.spivey, and j.read. So you can see here that they're using a first letter dot last name format. So if you check on any Active Directory checklist, it's probably going to tell you if you have a list of usernames, but you don't have any credentials yet, then one of the first things that you're going to want to do is asreproast. So we'll go ahead and give that a shot here. We're going to be using the get npusers.py script, providing our valid users.txt file. DC host, again, is going to be the run server. Our output file is going to be called hashes.asreproast. And then we have to provide our target, which is the try.lab domain. So we'll go ahead and run that. And it comes back with 1 valid user. So the t.spivey account has a hash here. If we cat out our hashes.asreproast, we can see that that is the hash that we get. I'm going to open a new tab here. So if we run a tool like hashcat against our hashes.asreproast, and I'm going to use the rocku word list. So user share word lists rocku, and I haven't decompressed it, but that's fine in this case. And then I'm just going to force it so we don't get any error output or any warnings or anything like that. Okay, so quick jump cut there just to save us a little bit of time. You can see it ran for about 9 seconds, but we did exhaust our word list and we did not recover any passwords. So this may be a place where some people will get stuck for the first time. However, there is a technique that we can do here that's a little bit less known than just the common asreproast or curbroast. And that is that if we have an account that has pre-auth disabled, which is how asreproasting works, this account can be used to request service tickets without authentication. So what we can do is we can basically curbroast using this no pre-auth user, and we can use that to potentially get some accounts without having to supply credentials. All right, so I'm going to once again paste in some syntax here. We're going to be using getUserSPNs.py. This time we're going to be using the no pre-auth flag, and we're going to provide our user that is authorized to authenticate without using Kerberos pre-auth. We're going to provide, once again, a users file. This is who we're going to target. Because since we don't have credentials, we can't just ask for the database of users with SPNs or service principal names. We're going to, again, target the DC host of run server output file. This time we're just going to call it hashes.curb. And then, again, our target is going to be the try.lab domain. We'll go ahead and run that. We don't get any verbose output here, but that's just how this tool works. If we cat out our hashes.curb file, you can see that we have a hash for the j.read account. So we can go ahead and move back to our hashcat. I'm going to move back and not do hashes.asreproast, but this time we're going to do hashes.curb. All right, and another quick jump cut just to save us another few seconds. You can see this ran for 8 seconds. It exhausted, and once again, we've recovered no hashes. So the issue here is that we need to provide some mutations. I'm going to provide the attack R, which is going to look for rules. We're going to go to the user share hashcat rules, and then I'm going to use best 66 it is now. I think it used to be best 64, but we're going to use the best 66 rule. I'll go ahead and run that here. Okay, so that jump cut saved us a little more time here. This one took 1 minute and 1 second. Obviously, when you apply mutations to a word list, it's going to take a little bit longer because it has more passwords to try. You can see here that our JReed user's hash cracked to Utah123. And this is a nod to John Reed, the triathlete who lives in Utah. So we can go ahead and validate this in the domain. So I'm going to grab the username here, and I'm going to open up a new tab here. NXC SMB, we will target run server, and we'll do the username of JReed, and then the password is going to be Utah123. Okay, so we can see that this is a valid user here. We get the happy little plus that tells us that this password succeeded. So the first thing that we're going to want to do when we get a valid domain user is go ahead and run Bloodhound. This will give us some indications as to what other attack paths we might have, and it just gives us a lot of valid information about the domain. All right, so relatively small domain. It didn't take too long to run, but now we get our zip file here in our home directory. I'm going to go ahead and open up Bloodhound, which I've already spun up. I'm just going to dump the file in and get that ingesting while we take a look at some other stuff. And that'll just save us some time later, so we're not waiting on this one. We can view our file ingest history and see that it is currently ingesting. So we'll take a look at this Bloodhound stuff later. All right, so one of the first things we're going to want to do is check out any SMB shares that this user might have access to. And we can check out shares on the domain controller. Obviously, we just get some pretty typical stuff. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a servers.txt file. So servers.txt. And I'm just going to provide all of the IP addresses that we're looking for. And this way we can run netexec against multiple servers at once. So I'm going to dump these in here, just get rid of all the stuff that's not an IP address, and then save the file. So then I'm going to do the same thing that we just ran. So the shares, but we're going to run it against, instead of run server, we'll just run it against servers.txt. Okay, and you can see here that on the swim server, we have a writable share. So this is something of interest, and this is called the transition zone $ share. So in triathlon, if you didn't know, the transition zone is where you go between the swimming and biking, and then biking and running. So the transition zone is just a kind of a lore intensive piece that I put in there for fun. But the transition zone share is writable. So we should be able to put a file in here. So this is a pretty common authentication technique where we'll coerce authentication from a user when they check the share. And we're going to use a LNK file to do that. We have a module in netexec that'll do this for us. And it's called Slinky. So I'm going to copy in some syntax here. So it's the netexec SMB. We're going to target the swim server because this is where we have the writable share. But we're going to use our John Reed user with the Utah123 password. We'll target the module Slinky, and then we have to provide some options here. So the name is going to be what you want the file to be called. I like to call it sneaky because then it's like a sneaky link. I think that's funny. So it'll be sneaky.lnk. We need to provide our ton0 IP address and then the shares here. So this will be which share we are targeting. So let me open up another tab here. I'm just going to grab our ton0 IP address, and then we can put that in. So moving back here, just need to move back to where I put in my ton0 placeholder, and we'll paste that and go ahead and run this. So that worked the way that we want. Now we're going to open up Responder and see if we can get authentication back from this LNK file. So just in this tab, I'll run sudo responder, and then we're going to have to provide the interface. So we're going to provide the ton0, so it'll work over our VPN. Okay, so almost immediately, we do have a hit here. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel this just so it doesn't conflict with anything that we run later. So we can see here that we have a callback from the 135 client. If we check on our hosts file, we can see that 135 is the swim server. So that's the server that we're already on. We can see that the e.ackerlund user is the one that is calling back, and we have a hash here. We can go ahead and copy this into a file and attempt to crack it. I'm going to call this file, we'll call it hashes.responder, and we'll just paste that in there and save it, and then we'll see if we can crack it again. So hashcat hashes.responder, and then we will use our user share word lists rocku file, and I'll go ahead and tac force again. All right, so that was a quicker crack this time. You can see it only took 9 seconds, but we exhausted our word list and we did not recover any passwords. And the reason for this is that the e.ackerlund user has a very good password, so I'm not going to attempt to do any mutations or anything like that. We're just going to go ahead and skip to the next thing that we would do here. So if we go back to our NXC SMB, we'll do servers.txt. If we run this, we can see here that SMB signing is disabled on both swim server and bike server. So what we can do is we can attempt an SMB relay attack. I'm going to use the gen relay list command here in netexec, and I'm going to call this file targets.txt, and it's going to run again. And then if we cat out targets.txt, you can see that we have both of the IP addresses here for both swim server and bike server. Now, because we are in a small lab, usually you would have way more than this. But because we are relaying from the swim server, we're not going to be able to relay to the swim server. So I'm going to go ahead and manually remove this from the file. I'm going to subble out targets.txt, and we're just going to pull the 135 address out of there just for brevity in this demonstration. So what we can do from here is we can run impacket ntlm relay x. And what we can do here is we need tf for targets file, targets.txt. We're going to do SMB2 support because we wanted to use SMB version 2. And then we can run any arbitrary command. So we can run who am I, for example. And we'll go ahead and let this run. I may jump cut to after this runs here, just because this has been running a little bit longer than usual in this lab. So let me do another quick cut to when we get our output. Okay, so sometimes you will get this error that the command ran, but then the status object name not found. This is okay, but if we were to get this back, it would say that we are running as NT Authority system. And the reason for this is that the E. Ackerland user is an administrator on the bike server host. Now, what we can do with that is we can run this command again, but without the command. And if an administrator is to authenticate and there's no command provided, it will just go ahead and dump the security account manager or the SAM file for us. And we can go ahead and extract the built-in local administrator accounts hash from that. Okay, you can see here, it's going to dump the SAM hashes. We get the administrator one, and then I'm just going to cancel it for brevity here. But we have the administrator hash, so we can go ahead and copy that. And then we can run something like nxc smb. We'll do servers.txt again. And the reason for that is sometimes you'll have local admin passwords that are reused. So we'll do user administrator, and then we'll need a capital H for hashes this time. And then we're going to do local auth. And you can see here that it didn't work for any of the other ones. So we don't have any password reuse, which is good. However, this is a valid hash for the built-in administrator account on bike server. We get the little pwned output that says we're an admin. And from here, because we are an administrator, we can go ahead and run secrets dump to extract any secrets that might be on this machine. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. We're just going to run secrets dump targeting the administrator account at bike server and then provide our hashes. Because secrets dump takes both the NT and LM hashes, since only the NT hash is in use anymore, we're going to just use the colon at the front and then provide the NT hash. All right, so the administrator hash comes out, but we already have that, so we're not going to use that one. And this is what we want here. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel this just for brevity. But we can see that we have a cached domain credential, a DCC2 hash for this new user, m.pearson. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this hash here, and we're going to create a new file. So I'll call this hashes.dcc, and I'll go ahead and paste this one in. We can do the same thing we've been doing. So hashcat, this one will be hashes.dcc, and then we'll provide our rocku file. And then force again. Okay, and that password does crack. It looks like we came through in 39 seconds. The reason that I didn't do any mutations on this one is because the DCC hash type usually takes a lot longer to crack. So I had to find a password that would crack without any mutations on this one. And the password here is 2silver. And the lore behind this one is that Morgan Pearson, this athlete, has 2 silver medals, one from the 2020 Olympics and one from the 2024 Olympics. Both are in the mixed triathlon relay. So that's kind of where the theme for this machine comes from. It's the triathlon relay because we have the relaying element. But we can go ahead and test that password here. So we'll do nxc smb servers.txt. Our user is going to be this m.pearson. And then the password again is going to be 2silver. Okay, so we run that and we see that we do have a pwned output here. So pluses tell us it's a valid login. And then this tells us that this user is an administrator back on swim server. So now we have an extended administrator on the bike server, right? We can access the eAckerland account through the relay. So this is kind of a compromise of the bike server. And then we have a full compromise credentialed of the swim server. So something that I haven't shown yet, but should be in your enumeration checklist, is checking for Active Directory certificate services. So we can use the NXC LDAP module. We're going to target the run server, and that's because that's where LDAP is running in this environment. And we will use, we can use mpearson. You can use the other user, it doesn't really matter. And we will use the ADCS module. And what this is going to do is enumerate to see if there are any certificate authorities in the environment. And you can see here that we find a PKI enrollment server here on swim server. And we have the canonical name of the CA, which is the Tri-CA. Now, because we have credentialed access to a user that is a local administrator on the machine where the CA is running, in this case, it's going to be the swim server machine, we can do a couple of attacks here that will give us arbitrary rights over users. So there are two intended attack paths for this machine. You can do either or, it doesn't matter. And those are going to be the golden certificate attack and then ADCS ESC7. We'll start with the golden certificate attack. I'm just going to grab some syntax here and paste it in. We'll go through it here. So we're going to use the certify CA command, and we'll use our mpearson user because that's the one that is the admin. We'll go ahead and target our name server, which is the domain controller's IP address. Our target is going to be where the CA is running, so that's the swim server. And then our config here, this is going to be the full name of the CA. So swim server Tri-CA. And we're going to use this backup flag. And what this is going to do is it's going to back up both the certificate and the private key of the CA itself to this trica.pfx file. So first, we're going to need to find a target that we want to attack. Often it's going to be the administrator account, but in this domain, the administrator account is actually disabled. So we can go into Bloodhound here, and you see that by now this is completed. We can go to the Explore tab and just look at all of our domain users. And we'll pop open the membership of this group. And you can see we have a few users that we've already seen. We've taken over this one and this one and this one. We don't have the administrator account, but we do see that there is a j.read admin account that is in the high value. We can click into this one and we can see that the jread admin account is a member of the domain admins group. So this is going to be a good target for our golden certificate attack. We can come back to here and I'm just going to dump some syntax in here. So we're going to use certify forge using our CA's PFX certificate file. We're going to use the user principal name of the jread_ADM and then their SID, which we can get from Bloodhound if we needed it. You can see up here, the object SID is here in the description. And then we need the CRL. This can just be blank. It just needs to be in there or we'll get an error. So go ahead and run this and you see that we get a certificate and private key written to jread_ADM forged.pfx. We can go ahead and go back online now and we can authenticate using certify auth and just target that PFX file and our DC's IP address. And you can see here, after a minute here, I did another jump cut, that we get the j.read ADM C cache file. So this is a TGT or a ticket granting ticket, and this can be used for authentication in Active Directory. So this is going to be the completion of the first path, the golden certificate route. The other route is going to be ESC7. So because we have a local administrator on the server where the CA is running, we get both the certificate managers and the CA manager privileges. And those permissions can be used in ESC7 to override some of the restrictions on what certificates you can request. So what we're going to do here is we'll do a certify request. We're going to use our mpearson account because remember, this is the one that has admin rights on the CA. We'll have to provide our CA name. We're going to target the sub CA template. And again, our UPN is going to be the jread admin account. Our target is going to be the swim server because that's where the CA is. And we will run this. It's going to fail. So the reason that this fails is because the sub CA account is not enrollable by just regular users. It's only domain admins and up. So it's going to say the permissions on the certificate template do not allow the current user to enroll. And that is fine. It says, do you want to save the private key? We're going to say yes. And it's going to give us a file 3.key. And I'll grab our next round of syntax here. So now that we have saved that, we're going to have to issue the request. So because we are a CA manager and a certificate manager, we're actually able to override the failure of this request and go ahead and issue it. So we can use the certify CA command, again, targeting our user and the CA. Here, the key is the issue request 3. So here it says it was 3.key. This was the request ID of the failed request. So we'll issue request number 3 on swim server. All right, and you can see that it successfully issued certificate request ID 3. So we can go ahead now and retrieve that. So we're going to do another certify rec, but this time we're going to do retrieve 3, and this should be able to retrieve our certificate for us. We once again get j.read admin pfx, and I'm going to remove our j.read admin.ccache file just so that we can request another one. Here we're going to do the same command that we did before, certify auth. This time, instead of authenticating using the forged PFX, we're going to be using the one that we requested from the server directly. So you can see that comes through. We get a TGT, and we also get the hashes for this admin user. The KRB5 name variable is going to carry our Kerberos ticket, so we'll just apply the name there. And then we can do stuff like NXC SMB, and we can authenticate to the run server because we're a domain admin now. And then we'll just do use a cache. And you can see here, it authenticates using the JRead admin account, and it gives us the fun little pwned output to say that, hey, you are an owner of this server. Since we're an owner of the domain controller, we can, from here, perform a DC sync attack. So the lab objective in this case was to find the full hash for the KRB TGT user. This is the like the Kerberos controller for the domain. So if we go ahead and paste in some more syntax, we're going to use secretstump.py. We're going to target our user using our TGT that we already have. And then we use the Kerberos and no password commands. And then we're only going to request hashes for the DC user KRB TGT, just for brevity here. You can dump the whole DIT, that's fine, it doesn't matter. But we're just going to target the KRB TGT. And this is how you would get the secret that will give you the points in the lab. So that's the conclusion for the lab walkthrough. Let me jump into, I have one other Easter egg here. That's kind of just for fun at the end. Let me show you what that is real quick. So if we jump back to our Nmap output here, we have an IIS server running on port 80 on bike server. So if we were to go to HTTP, oops, that is the wrong one. There we go. HTTP, this guy. So the IIS server, I actually put a cross-site scripting payload kind of thing, a script tag here. It says Goose Loves Crocs. That's just kind of a shout out to a guy, White Cyberduck, who bought a whole bunch of us in the Only Feet group Crocs for DEF CON. So that was just kind of the other Easter egg. Other than that, the machine is pretty lore intensive. It's got information about the US Triathlon team. And that was because we are doing a relay between users. So the users that we used in this lab were from a triathlon relay team for USA Triathlon. But that's really all I got. That's the conclusion of this lab walkthrough. And I will see you guys in the next one.